for the state, thank you so very much for being here. We do appreciate you joining us on this day. Before we begin this statement or making this statement, my name is Wangeshi Grace Kahuria. I am the Executive Director of IMLO, but I'm also the convener of the Police Reforms Working Group that brings together 23 human rights and governance organizations in the country, and we are here to stand in solidarity with the Kenyans who have been out on the streets, but more so to share our sentiments around the events that have happened over the last 1 week. Ladies and gentlemen, as we get into this statement, I would like to ask all of us to kindly stand for 1 minute to observe a minute of silence for those that have fallen over the last few days.
Yahweh, Duluma, wembamba nyuma twaenda na haki. Duluma, wembamba nyuma twaenda na haki. Pamoja we, pamoja, pamoja, pamoja twashinda. Pamoja, 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 pamoja twashinda. Hello you.
Thank you. Today marks the International Day in support of victims of torture. This is an international day that is celebrated globally after the signing of the UN Convention on the Prevention of Torture, Cruel, Inhumane and Degrading Treatment. This is an important day that will recognize victims, survivors of torture. Unfortunately today, we really do not have much to celebrate. However, we are in solidarity and commend the Kenyan public who came out in large numbers to defend our rights, and specifically through the call to reject the Punitive Finance Bill 2024. I would like to remind all of us that this is a constitutional right that is enshrined in our Constitution, Article 37, that provides for the right to association, the right to assembly, the right to picket, and the right to petition. This organic and independent movement has shown us the way that Kenyans can voice themselves. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with Kenyans getting onto the streets to voice themselves. This is a constitutional provision as per the Kenya Constitution 2010. I would like to hand over to my colleague to continue with the statement.
Today, as we mark the International Day in support of victims of torture, we are faced with the grim reminder of the dark days that Kenya faces before, and we have been in this situation before. Today, Kenya's President William Ruto yet again is a candidate of the International Criminal Court because of the crimes against humanity that has happened in the country yesterday and at night at Githurai. Mr. Ruto has overseen a planned and executable massacre against peaceful protesters and also other Kenyans who came to support across the country to reject the Punitive Finance Bill. The police shot young unarmed protesters outside Parliament, with the killing going into the night. Reports show that police shot dozens of people in Githurai, in Nairobi, 1 over 40 times between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. way after the protest had ended. Political responsibility lies squarely with Mr. Ruto, even though he was not presently on the streets. He cannot escape criminal accountability. Moreover, Adamson Bungei, who we take note has been transferred, the immediate former Nairobi police commander, is also equally liable. We know he has been transferred to also escape this kind of criminal liability. We believe that the massacre that happened in Githurai was fueled by an incited and ignorant address, which he gave yesterday at State House. Ruto spoke at 9 p.m. and threatened Kenyans, and the massacre started at 10 p.m. A more ground reason why he's an ICC candidate. Between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. yesterday, or between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. yesterday, the police reform working group recorded 23 deaths caused by the police fire, arrested over 53 others, and abducted over 17 more. In Githurai alone, police shot and killed at least 30 innocent people at night. At least 100 more are nursing gunshot wounds as we speak. Yeah, my name is Davis Malombe. I'm the Executive Director at the Kenya Human Rights Commission here. Thank you.
I'm Lorna Diaz, the Executive Coordinator of GALC Plus and Human Rights Defender. So, back to the statement. It's not protesters who are treasonous. It's Ruto's acts that are treasonous. These killings were further exacerbated by the deployment of the Kenya Defence Forces, KDF. The deployment, per the Special Gazette notice the Defence Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale issued, is illegal. Article 241 2C of Kenya's Constitution says that National Assembly must first approve such deployment, and this has not happened. There is nothing that justifies the use of live bullets on protesters. But this regime positions snipers to shoot and kill unarmed protesters. The destruction of property that happened on the streets was a security failure, and this regime should take the blame.
And my name is Kawive Wambua. I work with the Inuka Kenya Nisisi. Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya says that all sovereign power belongs to the people. When Kenyans poured on the streets in their numbers, they took back their power as per the law. They said, we do not want to delegate anymore. It is our power. Parliament is Kenya's property. Anyone can access it because they hold the power. Police are at no point allowed to blast people's heads because Kenyans have occupied their rightful house. Every person has the right to protest according to Article 37 of the Kenyan Constitution, and this is what and will continue to happen. It's what has happened, and it will continue to happen. We remind the president that the power he holds is given to him by Kenyans. If he had not been elected by Kenyans, he would be a vegetable farmer in Sugoi. But he's there because he has been elected. He should therefore respect the will of the people and their constitutional rights. He must stop threatening Kenyans. There is nothing treasonous in Kenyans coming out to demonstrate. Nothing. And we say, in support of the protesters and in support of all Kenyans, that he should not sign that bill which was passed by parliamentarians whom the people of Kenya do not recognize as so far, because they do not listen to the people who elected them. Thank you very much.
So at this point in time, I will invite three more comrades to just share further on the statement that we read. The first is they will introduce themselves. Then after that, you can ask them questions based on the statement.
So, members of the press, my name is Joshua Changwony, the Executive Director of CRECO Kenya. And yesterday, we were monitoring the events that happened in our country. And a record 67 towns in our country were having a demonstration. So this is a Kenyan affair. It's not a Nairobi affair. What concerned us is the government spokesperson spreading misinformation and disinformation. He is a former civil society comrade, and it's very unfortunate on the comments that he made on his X space by broadcasting that the protest was funded by external forces because of the president's comment at the G7 on the war between Russia and Ukraine. We've also seen the Secretary General of the UDA party making claims that the protests were funded by people who were against the finance bill because of taxation on imports, because of their business interests. Our verification and fact-checking, that did not concern the conversation at all. We call upon Kenyans to verify, stop and reflect any kind of the information that they come across in social media before they share anywhere in their spaces, because this is a time to reflect for the democratic space of our country, and Kenyans have digital rights.
Kwa majina naitwa Happy Olal, convener wa Social Justice Centers Working Group. Yangu ningependa kukondem yale matukio yalitokea usiku pale Githurai. Watu wanaelewa kwamba jana kulikuwa na ukosefu wa magari na ilibidi wale waandamaji na watu ambao hawaishi na karibu waweze kutembea hadi maeneo wanapoishi. Na ilikuwa ni uchungu sana ya kwamba kutoka usiku baada ya rais kutoa ile maoni yake, polisi waliweza kuattack na kuumiza watu, kuangamiza watu manyumbani mwao, na wale walikuwa njiani wakielekea nyumbani. Watu zaidi ya 100 wako mahospitalini kadhaa Nairobi wakitibiwa kwa sababu ya risasi. Na so far by hii asubuhi wa leo tulikuwa tumehesabu watu zaidi ya 30 ambao wameaga dunia kwa sababu ya kupigwa risasi na polisi. Kwa hivyo sisi tunasema ya kwamba hayo mauaji hayataenda bure. Hayo mauaji lazima kuwe na kitu inaitwa political responsibility na kitu inaitwa criminal responsibility. Kwa sababu itakuwaje ya kwamba protest ziliisha, maandamano yaliisha town, watu wakaanza kuenda nyumbani. Na sisi wenyewe tuliambia watu waende nyumbani ya kwamba waende watulie kwa sababu walikuwa wamemaliza maandamano. Itakuwaje mnafuata waandamanaji mpaka njiani na manyumbani mwao? Kwa hivyo yangu ni kukondem, na nasema ya kwamba ya mwisho lazima kutakuwa na responsibility. Na tuko tayari, kwa sababu hiyo tunaichukua kama masaka, tuko tayari kuenda hata ICC kufile kama wananchi wa Kenya. Asante.
Good afternoon, members of the press.
My name is Dr. Eboso. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm a participant in the ongoing protests by Gen Z and generally the young people of Kenya. I wish to speak specifically to the President's statement, which was issued yesterday, because unresponded to, then it creates a narrative that is wrong with regard to the protests. The President started by alluding to the sovereign power of the people and attempted to direct how the people will exercise that power. We wish to state that, or I wish to state that, whereas the Constitution directs that sovereign power will be exercised in accordance with the Constitution, the directive is to all those entities and institutions to whom the people's power has been delegated. The President cannot purport to be directing how the sovereign will exercise his own sovereignty. I wish to speak to the fact that the President alluded to the fact that the protesters are treasonous criminals that are being funded by certain criminals. Now, I have participated in all the protests since we started. And every single day, I take my own money, I take a matatu or an Uber, and I head to the protests. And that is the same as many other of my friends who have been participating in these protests. If there is funding that the President believes has taken place, the President can be sure we are not going for those protests because of the funding, wherever it may be coming from. We are going for these protests because it is very clear that the leaders that we elected are not representing us as far as the finance bill is concerned. We have a situation where entities and institutions to whom the people have delegated authority have assumed that this authority is inherent in them, that they can actually trade with this authority. We have an MP, we have information that from a group chat of MPs where they are discussing and saying how each of them was paid 3 million or 2 million in order to vote a certain way on the finance bill. And we are asking ourselves, how can you, a person whose vote is actually a delegated authority, be going to trade it for personal gain? And those are the things that we are angry about as citizens and as young people. And then you're making a decision that is going to affect me adversely. That is why I will spend my money or I will walk. I mean, yesterday, despite the cabinet secretary having assured us that the protests are allowed and that as long as they are peaceful, we were unable to get matatus to town because on Langata Road, I think there was a police blockade at Galleria. So we all had to alight and walk from Galleria to town. On Thika Road, there was a blockade at Allsops. On Mombasa Road, there was another blockade, and all the major roads leading to the city, trying to curtail the people reaching the city. But we still walked. And that should tell you that we are not getting paid. The number of people who come for those protests are so many. If there was funding and there was money being given to people, I don't even think this country would afford it. So no one is being paid to come for these protests. And if there is any intelligence that money exchanged hands, then someone must have lied to someone up there. But we, the protesters, or at least I and the people that I organized to come with me to the protest, we don't get any money for it. We are not funded for it. We are just angry that we can actually insist for the last 2 weeks that the finance bill needs to be reconsidered, and MPs whom we elected and who should be representing us can consistently neglect to hear what we are talking about, can consistently, or even as they behaved, they can just go ahead and disregard whatever is going on in the country. Protests all over the country, that is not something that any leader should overlook. You're having protests in Vihiga, you're having protests in Kisumu, in Kakamega, in Bungoma, in Nakuru, in numbers this nation has never seen. But those same elected representatives will use the vote that they are purporting to speak on behalf of those same people protesting. And that is what is making us angry. The president seemed to suggest that the protesters are criminals and that they are engaging in criminal activities, supposedly trying to justify the use of force against these protesters. I want to make it very clear. I have attended all the protests that have happened since the Gen Z protests started. It is we protesters that on the first day stopped other fellow protesters who perhaps, because of what we have seen from prior protests in Kenya, those political protests that have been happening, where it degenerates into stone throwing and looting. We were the ones arresting looters. We were the ones arresting looters and taking them to the same police who are tear gassing us and telling the police that this person is trying to loot. We are the ones who are telling fellow protesters to stop throwing stones and provoking the police. And I must say that the police this time round, a majority of the police have actually exercised quite a lot of restraint and have conducted themselves very well. But there are those who, I don't know where they get the orders from, but they come and then they just start doing funny things and provoking the protesters. And a good example is the shooting that happened last Thursday. That this was at the end of the protests. The protesters were actually running away, making away. And you can see from the cameras, and we were able to identify who that police officer is. And that is how we are going to identify each and every police officer who is going to misconduct themselves. They just shot at the crowd, a crowd that is running away. You shoot live ammunition to them and kill someone. Yesterday, we've all seen the videos of the protesters who overwhelmed the police. And by the way, it is true, the protesters actually overwhelmed the police. But they did not overwhelm the police with violence or with arms. The videos we are seeing all over, the protesters, none of them was armed. None of them was armed. And we can see in the videos, police officers actually firing bullets at the armed protesters. We can see from the images, gory images of a protester with brains splattered all over the floor. What is this that would make someone aim, and that's not an AK-47 even, what would make you aim that kind of ammunition to the head of a protester who's not armed? How important is that parliament building or entry into that parliament building that it would cause you to not want to just maim, but to thoroughly and inhumanly kill these young people who are protesting? And that is what is making us very, very angry and very, very sad. Not one. There were two, for me I've seen two images of one whose head has been completely blown off the body by a bullet, and another whose brain is splattered on the ground. So who is this that was shooting this person? And what was the aim? Because this person is not armed. This is a 21-year-old. At most, this person will get into, and they did get into parliament, despite the shooting, and that should tell you that bullets are not going to stop anyone. So they indeed got into parliament. What did they do? They simply tore some papers here and there, broke some furniture. That is nothing compared to what really. So the last thing with regard to the issue of the protests and the killing is that these protests have remained peaceful, and I wanted to bring out the numbers that out of these protests, only 2 police officers have been adversely involved. One lost his hands, and it's in the public domain. It's in the public domain that the police officer inadvertently mishandled the tear gas canister, and it blew on him. It's very unfortunate. We are very sorry for that, but it was not the protesters who caused that. The other one is a police officer who was killed yesterday, and we are very sad that
this protest will lead to the death of a police officer. Up until yesterday, there was no police officer in Nairobi who had been killed as a result of this protest. This police officer who died was actually shot by a fellow police officer, accidentally. It was not by the hand of the protesters. So let's not create the narrative that these protesters are dangerous. They are not dangerous. There has been no complaint raised that the protesters in Nairobi actually looted any of these private entities. And in fact, it is these supermarkets that have been providing us with water, free. They've been providing protesters with water. They are the same ones who've been hiding us when tear gas ikizidi. Wanatuambia ingieni hapa kidogo itulie. So these protesters are not criminals. And let us face the truth. Let us face the real problem. The real problem is the finance bill. If that finance bill had been paused, if just yesterday the MPs had decided that we are going to put a halt, even a temporary halt on the finance bill and listen to what these protesters are saying, we would not have what we are having. But you cannot employ arms to fight the people. And I want to finally talk to the security agencies directly. I want to talk to the military personnel. I want to talk to the police. These protesters are your sisters and your brothers. You know in your heart of hearts that these protesters are protesting for genuine things. You know that. Please do not be used to kill these protesters. If you must protect government property, that's fine, but do not kill. You're enough. I mean, you're capable enough to just hold off this. These people are not armed. And your tear gas has been working properly up to now. Why do you have to start using arms against these individuals? And we saw yesterday, after having after having sprayed bullets on these protesters, one of the policemen who had been an ununiformed policeman and had been among the ones shooting these protesters, later found out that his brother is actually one of the guys who had been shot. So I'm talking to the military, I'm talking to the police personnel. You all work for the people of Kenya. Please do not be used for political reasons and then you actually go on and commit very atrocious crimes against the very people who pay your salaries.
Thank you. So we want to invite any questions from the media to any of the readers. Do you have any questions for them? Thank you. Those your colleagues. Sure.
Parliament has already passed. They have already approved what the CS said yesterday in relation to deployment of state labor. Does it make it authentic?
Hi, Julia from Reuters. In the statement, you say that there's 23
gazetted the deployment even before the request was made to Parliament. That's what we are talking about. If Parliament has approved now, it has approved an illegal process which already was gazetted. So it didn't matter whether Parliament approved or not, because already the government has gazetted. Maybe it's because we don't have a Parliament anyway, so the government can say what they do and Parliament will rubber stamp and go on with it. That's what we are talking about, the illegality. That what they have approved now had already been actioned before. I'll invite my colleagues to respond to the other issues.
Thank you for the questions around the numbers. I will respond to the questions on numbers. Now, the numbers we have shared, the 23 that we reported as persons who had lost their lives, that was as of 7 p.m. last night. So we need to get that clear. That was as of yesterday. These are numbers that have been put together through a situation room that we are monitoring. So the joint team has a situation room, and we are getting information and verifying it before we release it. And that's why at this juncture we cannot verify the actual numbers for Githurai, because that is still an ongoing process. We have people who are still in hospital, a lot of them under surgery. And we have noted that what happened in Githurai was in the night. And we are calling it the Githurai massacre because that is what is out there. So we have alleged reports of people who have died. We know the numbers are high. We will get that verified. There are processes that are already going on, and that will be verified. But we do know it's in the excess of 30.
And sorry, the police opened fire, like just on the details of what happened. Do you know the facts?
We do not have the facts. We just know that fire was opened up on unsuspecting, on people who are getting back home, people in their houses, traders early in the morning, around 5-ish today. So those are the details that are emerging. But as I said, this information will be verified and it will be shared with the media as soon as it is verified. Yeah.
So sorry, the 23 deaths were in Nairobi?
That's countrywide. Yeah.
So, in terms of adding to the deployment, our position is very clear. It's not just about the law. So, what Duale and Mr. Ruto have tried to do is completely abominable. It is uncalled for. It is unacceptable, and it is not necessary. You cannot deploy the military and the police to kill your own people who have employed you. So it's not just about the illegality, but it's completely immoral. And that's why we are calling upon them to desist from these criminal political assignments. And we also want to remind them about what happened in 2007. When people